Hello, Tybee. I bring you greetings from, like last time, from my home church, Heritage Hills Church in Conyers, Georgia, which is way too close to Atlanta, but unfortunately that is where I happen to be lighting at the moment. Someday it may be here. I don't know. We're working on that. I was thinking a lot about what to talk about today, and I thought, well, we all get discouraged. We all get down. We all have hard times. I like the song Desparado from the Eagles, or Clint Black. That's my favorite one. Desparado was a guy that was not committing. He was sitting out on a fence. He didn't want to come down. He didn't know that he wanted to stay. He didn't know what to do. I imagine if I was a desperate cowboy sitting on a fence somewhere in the middle of nowhere, I'd want to go home and get in a nice warm bed and have me some sweet tea and enjoy it. But we get in those places in life where we don't know what to do. In the song Desparado, the writer and the singer is calling him to come down, come home, come on in from whatever's got you. And they urge him and urge him. That's what we are to do, to find those that are desperate, those that need a place of shelter, a place of refuge, a place of hope. Have you ever had one of those days? You know, I've always got to have some little gimmick. I'm a child. I like flowers. You ever had one of those days where you sleep well, you wake up, and you jump out of bed, and I did this morning, you jump out of bed, and your back hurts, and your knees hurt, and your shoulders hurt, and you can't hardly move, and you're going, oh gosh, this is just terrible. And you don't feel quite as happy as you did when you first woke up and heard the birds singing and the waves crashing and the rocks and the streams and all that. And then you go downstairs and you think, I want a nice bowl of cereal and blueberries and strawberries and fresh peaches for my breakfast as I sit out on my wonderful deck at home. And on our back deck, we have trees and woods and flowers and a creek and all that. And you get downstairs and your creepy little brother ate the blueberries and all the cereal during the night, and you don't have anything to eat except oatmeal that's instant. And your day gets a little worse and a little worse. And you go to crank your car to go to the job you don't really want to have. And, well, like for me, and some of y'all know the stories, that last Monday I started a new job at a funeral home. I quit the job at 12 o'clock. Because it just wasn't the job for me. So by 12 o'clock, my life was really getting bad. And I kept thinking, oh, Lord, this day cannot get any worse. Except that Belk did take back the suit that I bought on Sunday because I wasn't going to need a suit anymore. So the day got a little bit better. But then, you know, you get to work and you know, the boss is on your case, you got deadlines you can't meet, the computer crashes, you've lost your files, you have no, in my case where I'm a writer, I have nothing creative in my mind, and you try, and the harder you get, the worse and worse, you can't think of anything, whoops, and it just gets worse and worse until finally you say, I can't do this anymore. But there's one thing you can always remember, is that God's love never ends. It never ends. Now, I forget microphones. I've got this little vase right here. I've got this little vase that to me represents God's love. It's got water in it, but God's love never ends. So what do you need refuge from? Yourself. When Samuel read the verse a while ago, it talks about God is your refuge, He's your protection, He's your shelter. What do you need refuge and protection from besides yourself? We have grief. We have loved ones who are sick. We have loved ones who may die, and we think, I can't handle that. I can't deal with that. I need to go away somewhere and forget it. But God's love never ends. You may lose your job, as I've done. You may not know where the next dollar is coming from to pay the bill. I've been there. Many people have been there. You've got a car that's falling apart, and you don't know where the money's going to come from another one. But God's love is never going to end. He's always protecting you. You may have family problems. I'm a very pretty much transparent person on Facebook, as some of you know. I pretty much tell everything that goes on in my family, to my mother's sorrow and despair. Before I left to come down here, she said, do not tell any more stories about me to those people. But there's a lot of things that goes on in our family. It's not as rosy as it seems on Facebook. There are days that we all get crazy. My dad passed away a number of years ago. He was a Christian. I know where he is. There's no problems. We're fine. But my mom moved in with me. My brother moved in with me. And when you're my age and my brother's age and my mom's age, it's a whole lot different than when you was 3 and 5 and 10 and 20. So we have problems in our family. We have money problems. We have problems with I don't like to eat that. Let's put the guy on the Food Network says to use 3.5 cups of oil in this. And we say, we have heart disease in this family. We can't do that. So you need a refuge. But God's love never ends. You have loneliness. You ever been lonely? Have you ever been lonely in the midst of people? Have you ever been in a crowd like this and you were lonely? Have you ever been homesick? My first year in college, I went to Georgia Southern with several people out here, Michael, Deidre. I went to Georgia Southern. Oh. Yay. I had never been away from home before. I was a homebody. I was a mama's boy. And one thing you don't do to a mama's boy is you don't talk about his mama. Except me, I can. But I'd never been away from home. I was in a close family, a close church. And all of a sudden, I was 200-something miles away, did not know one soul on Georgia Southern's campus. At that time, it was a college. And I had a hard first week. At that time, we were not supposed to leave campus for the first couple weeks. We could not have cars, and I could not leave. Well, come Friday, I left. I got on a bus in Statesboro and followed US 80 all the way up somewhere in some little bird town and changed buses and got on Highway 42 that got me to Stockbridge after about 10 hours on a bus. But I was home, and I was back where my parents and my family's love protected me. And I went to my church the next day, and I heard about God's love, and it protected me because God's love never ends. People have addictions. It may be drugs, it may be alcohol, it may be smoking. We have people in my family who struggle with that. People have addictions to spending money. People have addictions to wanting the next best, greatest technological thing. I'm bad about that. I used to be really bad about that. But people want more and more and more, and that's an addiction like anything else. And you need help. You want to wear the best clothes. You want to be the nicest. My church at home is a very lovely church. It has a nice big building. We'll have several hundred on Sunday mornings. fine sanctuary, fine staff, and it's a wonderful place to worship. But there are people not in that church, but there are people who have to be in a church like that in order to find God. You have to be in First Baptist or First Methodist or, you know, St. Jimmy the Catholic or whatever you have to be. I was from a Mennonite family. You know, my great-grandpa is probably turning over in his little Mennonite grave to say, that boy, he is in a bar and he's wearing shorts and a T-shirt. At least my head is covered. That will make him happy. But he has his hair is not cut the right way. But he taught us. My grandparents and ancestors taught us that God is supreme. You trust, as he would say, you trust God in everything that you do. You trust God in the good times and in the bad times. And we'll say, yes, Papa, we do, because he taught us that God's love never ends. Now, I was doing this. I used to do a prison ministry in Atlanta, a women's prison, then we'd go to a men's prison. And the one thing that they need is to know that God's love never ends. And that God's love never ends. And we'd go through this, and we'd use this little illusion. It's not magic. Anybody can do it. I don't do magic. I do illusions. We were going through this thing, and I was talking. Well, all of a sudden, I did not prepare well, and God's love ran out. And God's love never ends. Pour, and nothing came. Well, that was kind of a bad moment, but one of the women prisoners said, well, you know, that's just a little trick vase, but God's love really doesn't run out. And I thought, well, bless your heart, that's good. But as we go through the life we're in, we have good times, we have bad times, things we need protection from. I think of this place, Benny's and Tybee and this whole area, the Low Country, I think of this as paradise, because I live in McDonough, which is a suburb of Atlanta. It's a small town, have a nice little town square, a lot of things going on, good people, not a lot of crime yet, and the community's centered around a lot of churches, and they're good people, but we're very close to Atlanta. I worked in Atlanta for 30 years. And it's a scary place. So when I come here, I think of this as like a heaven. But I know that there are problems here. There are things that go on. It's everywhere. But we can have assurance because God's love never ends. But there's hope. There's hope. How do you find the refuge? How do you find the protection? For me, I find it in music. There are very few times that you will find me without earbuds in and plugged into my iPod or my phone or something, no matter where I go. I learned that when I was working downtown, because there's so many people who have needs, and you can't leave your building and go somewhere else. So I learned how to say a couple things in Spanish of like, you know, I have nothing right now. But then I put my earbuds in and not attach it, but just stick it down in my shirt, and so they wouldn't know. But then I got really convicted because that was bad to do. And so I would always, then I learned to carry like some McDonald's gift cards for $5. I would have some of those in my pocket and just give those out because I really did not have money, but I could get some gift cards from somebody, and I'd hand those out to the street livers and, you know, wish them on their way. But music is what calms me. If I'm having a horrible, horrible, horrible stress-filled day, I can put on music. Not necessarily church music or Christian music. I can put on rock, I can put on jazz, I can put on reggae or whatever I'm into. But that gives me a protection. One thing that you can find a shelter of is a place like this. A church, a fellowship of believers who have similar ideals and values. This is a very diverse congregation here. I know that. Yeah, and that's the good thing about it. There's no judgments. There's nothing. It's just love, acceptance because of God. This is protection. This is safety. This is your refuge. You can come here for an hour and leave here, and hopefully, when you leave here, you will have a little sense of peace that you can make it through another day. I have 2 or 3 go-to things when I need to kind of chill out and find my refuge. One of them is, this comes from my Mennonite background, is that Scripture is so important, especially Old Testament. And so I learned at an early age to keep reciting the Lord's Prayer and Psalm 23. The important thing about Psalm 23, when I need to find a quiet place here, when you can't, is the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters, and he restores my soul. There's nothing more calming than to imagine in your mind. Close your mind, open your heart, and imagine the green pasture you're laying in. When I was a kid, I loved to go lay in the grass. I loved to lay in the grass and just watch the sky. When you grow up, you kind of think, I can't do that anymore, but you can. I've learned to do that again, physically and spiritually and emotionally. So God is telling you, I'll lead you up to lie down in the green pastures and beside the still waters, not rapids, not waterfalls, not boisterous water, where even though as nice as it can sound, the rapids can stir you up still, but they're still waters. And when I go to this place, I imagine the nice little still brook, in the middle of a pasture, trickling over some rocks, and you can hear that as you're lying in the grass, and the promise is that he restores your soul. And I can promise you that he does. I can promise you, because God's love never ends yet. So I guess I would encourage you today, when things get really bad, when things are stressful, when you're losing your temper, which I do, I honestly went through a lot of therapy when I was a boy because I had a bad temper. There's a hole in my family home in the bedroom door about the size of a baseball bat, where I would get so angry and I would just ram that bat through the door. I don't do that anymore, Samuel. But I rammed the bat through the door. And as I grew up, I'd ask my mom or dad, I said, why don't y'all put a new door in my room? And they said, no, you need to remember what anger and what losing your temper to that extreme can do. So if you're losing your temper, if you're losing control, remember that you can have protection. You can come in. You can come off the fence. You can come into God. You can come into a calm, quiet place. Whatever scriptures are good for you, it may be, I've learned a lot of times I will recite in my head the Psalms 23. I'll recite the Lord's Prayer. I will do from my more liturgical, traditional side, I'll do the Apostles' Creed, because it's words, but they're good words, and they're calming words. And that's what calms me down, and have the music. So I would encourage you to find that, even though you're in a wonderful place, to find your quiet spot and remember that God is there. Remember that God is always with you. He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. You have wonderful, wonderful people in this room and wonderful people outside these walls that are here to encourage you and here to support you. And if you can't find one of them, you've always got God, because God's love.